I'm Igor Strilets, the chairman of IG working group number 4. This group works with on the topic of satellite services. Today, in our discussion, we are going to have Ayla Raquel, Director General of Alia Space Brazil. She's going to speak online to us. Mr. Vasily Leonov, Deputy Chairman, the National Center Satellite Communication, Kasap Sataliev, Head of OneWeb Project, Jusan Mobile, and Dmitry Betlugin, the Access Director in the Sales Markets of Central Sales, the Eutelsat One Group. So maybe a little bit of an introduction from my side. Satellite communications are now undergoing through some tectonic changes. There has been lots of constellation of various satellites that compete with each other. They compete with the high orbit or geostationary orbit satellites. Some acquisitions and mergers are starting. So basically the events, now we see the events happening that 5 years ago were hard to imagine. There is a new flagship of the space industry which addresses the providing turnkey solutions from manufacturing, launching satellites, providing services, and the success of this flagship company are obvious. They are now profitable. Moreover, the most recent data indicates that given the customer's equipment is provided for lease, free of charge, if you sign a 1-year contract. So basically what is happening is big pressure on the pricing policy, and the geostationary satellite operators are having hard times now because the satellite networks typically designed to be around for 10 to 15 years. Satellites get launched, and the period of the active existence starts from the active development. So the whole cycle takes up to 20 years. So initially, the reliance on economic model, which today must be somehow changed or adopted. So this is the situation that is developing. There are new geo, non-geo satellites, low orbit satellites, geo, high ellipsis, and some other designs. So most likely soon we will see some mergers of the low orbit satellites. So now I'd like to give the floor to our distinguished speakers today. And first I'd like to give the floor to Ayla Raquel, Director General of Alia Space Brazil. Alia, over to you.
Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon for everybody now. I'm gonna share my presentation. I will talk about the satellite-guided monitoring solutions integration of EO, IoT, and SATCOM for ecosystem protection, community economic empowerment, and recognition of illegal activities in dense forest conservation areas. Let me see. I can't go to the next. Okay. As a Brazilian, I bring a sense of urgency and responsibility regarding what is happening in our forests. Climate change is no longer a future scenario. It's our current reality. And tropical forests are the heart of this transformation. But just as vital as protecting the environmental is ensuring the dignity, autonomy, and development of communities who live in these regions. Today, I lead Alia Space, a company that works with a network of over 200 satellites equipped with optical sensors, including panchromatic, multispectral, and hyperspectral, as well as radar, SAR, IoT, sensors, and onboard artificial intelligence. On the ground, we use smart trackers, tree attached sensors and data towers with up to 150 kilometers range. Soon, we will also incorporate aircraft and drones partners, completing and integrating mesh of observation and communication systems. Our mission is clear: to turn data into decisions and decisions into impact. Understanding the and this is our project of our own constellation. Nowadays, we count on the constellations of partnerships, and now, and in the near future, we will count on our own satellites. It will be 2 constellations with 108 satellites that will occupy the low orbit for sun synchronous. To illustrate this integration, I am presenting a case study developed in the Amazon in collaboration with the Nacau Institute, which supports 28 indigenous communities along the Madeira River and the Porto Esperança farm in the southern of Bahia, Brazil, which has developed groundbreaking technology such as intelligent tags for trees, sensor-equipped pruning tools, and biorefinery to transform cocoa waste into food-grade raw materials. Our project installs intelligent tags on native cocoa trees, cultivating using the traditional Cabruca agroforest method, a system where the cocoa grows under the canopy of the trees. These tags are connected to tools used in harvest, capturing data that would otherwise remain inaccessible. We structured this project around 3 main technological pillars: Internet of Things, establishing communication between tree tags and IoT satellites, data collected via satellite and terrestrial towers, providing indicators such as productivity, species identifications, and genetic equality. 2, optical and multispectral sensor. High-resolution images, monitoring water levels, detects deforestation and fire, analyzes biodiversity, and identify pollution traces in rivers. And 3, satellite internet. Communities access data in real time and can alert authorities during emergencies. Digital inclusion is enhanced through training and local innovation, encouraging and to creating of community-driven solutions. And also the carbon market. Beyond environmental monitoring and production traceability, the data then generated empowers these communities to participate in the carbon credit market, protecting rate genetics and contributing directly to forest conservation. We support their financial autonomy while respecting their ways of life and reinforcing their rightful presence in the preserved land.
Thank you very much, Alia. Well, I was lucky to meet you last fall back in Hong Kong. We had some very nice conversation that time.
Yes, we had. It was a very good pleasure to meet you again now. Now I see you, and yes, I recognize you now. It was a pleasure to be there talking about sustainability. This is why our measures to have a lot of different partnerships and different constellations is about what we talked back there in Hong Kong. It's about the sustainability of the space. So I will use not the other constellation as my competitors. I use them as my collaborators because we will be all the time need all kinds of sensors to deliver these kind of challenges for many different sectors. like mining, like the agriculture. In Brazil, we are extensive, a very big, extensive country. So we have many, many remote areas that we must deliver a lot of different solutions. And all the time, the cases where I am facing, they all of them need me to think about not only satellites for Earth observation, but satellites that has IoT, satellite for communication. In this way, we are helping to deliver them very valuable data. And also to talk about the improving the development of the economy of these communities that lives into protected areas, those people will be able also to use the registration of their trees as a way of getting their trees to the carbon market. For them, it's one more way of receiving money, of having more possibility of receiving money for their daily lives. So this is a way of improving these indigenous communities. Registering, taking auditable data is the way that we can offer to these small communities all the help they need to keep living into protected areas and then to create also in the same time their economy.
Спасибо большое, Айла, за
Ayla, thank you very much for your presentation. We'll probably move to some other presentations, and later we will start a discussion, and we'll be happy to have you in that discussion.
дать микрофон.
I propose now to turn the floor to Dmitry Vitlugin. Thank you very much, Ayla.
Thank you very much.
Dmitry Vitlugin is the director on the satellite communication and the availability to the market and sales in Central Asia. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Do we have a clicker somewhere? Yes, good afternoon again. I will try not to take too much of your time, and I would like to emphasize only the core issues. And what I'm going to tell you about is that there are three main issues that I would like to draw the attention of the audience to. The first one is provision of the transportation network for base stations, which is one of the main investment tasks of telecom operators, because all terrestrial operators, especially cellular telephony operators, they try to provide a very high capacity of their networks and integrate new technologies. And what is more important, they would like to reach out to the remote areas and make sure their infrastructure is going to be available there. And the request for the provision of satellite transmission is growing all over the world. In some countries faster, in others slower. But in general, this demand is on the agenda, and therefore we expect that there will only be growing use of non-geostationary orbital systems for the organization of trunk links of cellular communication will only be growing. And secondly, in spite of very low penetration, it's only 2% of all the trunk networks that are based on the basis of non-geostationary orbital systems. And it has to be noted that NGSO systems make telecommunication services available in remote areas, and in some cases the price can be by 40 or 50% less expensive compared to LOS systems. And you see the architecture of the Eutelsat OneWeb. But in general, this topology is not so much different from any other non-geostationary satellite constellation, because usually in front of the base station we have a satellite terminal which is connected with the satellite constellation and then sends the signal back to the nucleus of the terrestrial operator network. And these solutions can be used as the main solution or as a backup solution, as a convergency solution when there exists a VSAT available or maybe some fiber optic connections. And maybe using several telecommunication technologies, I mean GSO and NGSO, it will be possible to prioritize the traffic and to send the data through VSAT, which are not of where the latency of the signal is not of critical importance, and we can use GSO for the transmission of the data sensitive to latency. Therefore, what is the advantage of GSO compared to other satellite systems and compared to some terrestrial solutions? Number one is the possibility to connect remote areas using economically efficient and safe way. And I would like to underscore that on the basis of Eutelsat OneWeb, all traffic is encoded. It's in the closed link. And there are two levels and two encryption algorithms that we usually use. And our partner is adding up two more encryption encoding mechanisms, algorithms that make this communication link even more secure. And we also deploy the base stations much faster compared to the traditional fiber optic solutions. And what is also very important is that the Satcom is providing solution to meet the requirements on the coverage. And these solutions on the basis of satellite can be used as a temporary solution or a permanent solution. A temporary solution, this is exactly what I was already covering during the previous session, when an operator has an opportunity to test his business case and to understand if there is a need to bring the terrestrial infrastructure to a certain location. And as I have already mentioned before, the number of sites with satellite transmission, especially NGSO, right now, it is not very representative. It is not very significant. However, the demand for it is growing, and the trunk satellite links and solutions are very extensively used in sub-Saharan region, and we know that about 30% of the users are getting connected through satellites. In Europe and North America, this percentage is lower. In Asia, is even lower. But we see that there is a huge demand in the island countries, and globally working with different cellular operators, we understand the cases that will be more interesting for us. I would like to skip this slide because it is duplicating what I have already mentioned before. And here on this slide, you will see three examples of the most popular use cases for mobile operators. This is the connection with the remote areas without any infrastructure, the so-called greenfield sites. This means that we are constructing new network infrastructure, and the NGSO here is ideally suitable because it is economically efficient solution without the need to lay down very long fiber optic lines. And this solution is usually implemented by us jointly with Australian Telstra, which is implementing a similar project in Australia on the basis of NGSO to improve the mobile coverage. And they're integrating about 300 base stations in remote areas of Australia at the expense of the Australian government. There is also another model which is called brownfield, where some network infrastructure is already available. However, there is a need to introduce new technologies or to improve the production capacity of the available infrastructure. Therefore, the solutions based on NGSO enable us to quickly upgrade and modernize the infrastructure which is already available, and they can be used as an alternative network or as a backup, especially where there are some climatic unfavorable conditions, and we are implementing similar projects jointly with Orange, where they are expanding their business solutions for corporate clients to ensure that there will be a continuous internet connection for them. And the last case, third case, which is very interesting and which is in very high demand, represented by mobile base stations, which can very quickly be deployed to enable coverage in case of natural calamities or mass events, and jointly with Com News and Bouygues Telecom are using the BTRAC solution during public events or mass events where the coverage is usually provided for thousands of slide, but it's available in the handouts of the conference, but it is very important. And here I would like to familiarize yourselves with this slide very briefly, because we've analyzed TCO model, and as an example, we decided to take the need and the demand and deployment of remote locations, 100 sites. 20 with long link and 80 with short link, and 4 with G service in one of the developing countries, with the capacity of all these sites of 400 megabits per second, with planning horizon for upcoming 10 years. And based on the analysis of this model, we understood that NGSO solutions are more efficient compared to fiber optic, LOS, and based on the medium orbital constellations. I would say that we are about $5 million less expensive compared to a fiber optic solution throughout the period of 10 years. And moreover, we understand that TCO in this model can be reduced because we keep reducing the price of satellite terminals. Well, I've managed to make my presentation very brief. I did not abuse the time of the audience, but my main message is that the terrestrial operators should not take NGSO and satellite communication in general as competitors, because we are your partners, and we are present in this market not for the sake of destroying your business. We are ready to provide solutions to you which will help to deliver your services where you will not be able to do so. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dmitry. And I would like to ask you one question. You talked about the role of trunk networks and the objects on the move, for example, the ships or vehicles. Do you consider them as the subscriber bases, and your satellites might be used as trunk networks? Well, you know, this kind of application is a different business case, which is pretty popular, I have to admit. And as a matter of fact, we believe that the interest to such solutions will only be growing. And even now, in the region of Central Asia and Kazakhstan, we have a pilot project We have already integrated 2 trains, and we are providing the telecom services inside the train. And what we see already now is that the quality of the service is pretty high. We also see that there is a lot of interest from the point of view of the terrestrial mobility, not only for the trains, but also for automobile transportation networks. In the UK, we have the projects when the buses are getting connected through NGSO to our satellites. And here I have to mention why these technologies have been chosen and why people are not satisfied only with cellular telephony. Because unfortunately, when the speed of the train is too high, the cellular network cannot ensure handover. And even, for example, when you are moving with at the speed of 120 kilometers per hour, the signals are failing to get through. At least this is the situation in our region of different parts of Central Asia. This is what I notice. Civil aviation is another case. We know that Starlink is working very actively with American Airlines, and we are getting connected Aer Lingus, Argentinos, and some other airlines, and we have in plans Turkish Airlines, Emirates. Therefore, and airlines are usually choosing convergency solutions based on the combination of GSO and NGSO traffic, which enable us to implement the solutions differentiating the traffic that is consumed inside the aircraft and the traffic which is not sensitive to latency of signal. And everything else is sent via NGSO. And maritime shipment, not only the cruise liners, where traditionally satellite communication services are very strong, but also the cargo shipment, maritime cargo shipment, because we see that the forwarders are actually taking all their available space on board their ships. 3, 4 terminals, for example, 2 VSATs, 1 Starlink, 1 ours, and the demand in the volume of traffic keeps growing among such users, and I believe that it will only keep growing because it is the aviation traffic, it is the traffic for the crew on board the ship, and some other solutions as well. Thank you very much. Are there any questions to this to the speaker? No? Okay, then let us turn the floor to Musa Valiyev, who will be talking about the Jusan Mobile solutions. Good afternoon, colleagues. I knew that I'm participating in the final session. Therefore, I decided not to overload my presentation with numbers, computations, and graphs, and it will be a very light presentation, and hopefully I will be very brief. Jusan Mobile is the company which used to be known under the name of Castranscom. We have networks, 9 branches, our own daughter companies, 7,300 fiber optic lines, 21 international connections, and 1 GSO satellite hub with about 197 stations. And the new area of activity for us, the contract that we've been working on for longer than 1 year, we can now state officially that Jusan Mobile is the distributor of OneWeb in the territory of Kazakhstan. And I would like to add that people ask a lot of questions about OneWeb and what are we different from Starlink, because Starlink has already entered our market and people are using it. First and foremost, I have to say that OneWeb is the solution for business, and it is working for the end users. And whereas Starlink, when it is operating here in the territory of Kazakhstan, when something happens, when the station breaks, people are left behind without any maintenance service or problem shooting. And whereas we are providing turnkey solutions, and when everything is going wrong, then we go out to the field and we are providing maintenance or repair services and restore the communication link. And everything is stipulated in our contracts. And as I have already mentioned before, there is a very flexible system of leveraging and controlling the speed rate and the selection of tariffs depending on the client. Therefore, we are client-centric company. A small slide on Kassat, because many people are wondering what is the difference between OneWeb and Kassat. Kassat is a GSO satellite, and therefore it is on a much higher orbit, and therefore the latency is there, and the bitrate is different. Whereas OneWeb is the service that we are promoting in the market now, and since it is on a lower orbit, therefore latency is less than 70 milliseconds. OneWeb network has 648 satellites. Then the satellites are placed in 12 planes, and therefore the field of view is much better. And I decided to present here the organigram of the network. And please do pay attention to POP and Gateway, because both of them are located here in Kazakhstan. And I think that it is the achievement of Kazakhstan, as a matter of fact, because we managed to drag OneWeb into our country and to place these two components of the network in our territory, because it is really very favorable for Kazakhstan. And One Hub is going to be servicing the whole region: Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, the whole region of Central Asia. And one way or another, these operators who will come to us, they will be asking for the channels and the capacity, and this will be translated into the revenues for the government and for the region in general. We have already implemented this year. Now we are at the final step, and the pilot hub has already been constructed and installed in the territory of Kazakhstan. It is fully compliant with the advanced technologies, and it is backed up. We have several gensets, and everything is working in a very stable way. And the hub is located in the territory of Kazakhstan, in Almatynskaya province. Therefore, the internet is of our Kazakh origin, and for the first ever time, it's broadcasting from the low orbit over the territory of Kazakhstan. The terminals for the end users are different. They might be like dome-like with parabolic antennas, and phased antenna array is also very actively used now, and they work everywhere, on the ground, in the air, and in the sea. And as Dmitry has already mentioned, everything is working on the move as well. Starting January this year, we are testing for our clients, demonstrating this service, and we are trying to understand the quality features of this service. And during this period of time, to our great surprise, the antennas and satellite communication OneWeb has been operational in a very stable way under various climatic conditions, because we have already been through the snowstorms and rains, and as Dmitry has already mentioned, the network, the system was working in a very stable way, and we have already implemented these communication services for 2 Talga trains. And people are using this service, this telecommunication network, and especially the mothers with many children are very grateful about the quality of the services, because all their children who are traveling together with their mothers are watching YouTube and cartoons, and they are really very happy. And also our telecommunication service is used by the ambulances, by the fire extinction companies, and the oil and gas development companies, because we used to be Telecom, and Tele2, K-Cell, and Mobile have already tested our services as well, and they provided a very positive feedback. Here is a photo report. We tested our system in different parts of Kazakhstan, and all our clients were very positive about our communication services, because they said that all the parameters are of very high quality. You see the antenna, it is really very small. Its dimensions are very modest. It can be deployed anywhere. And here you see some screenshots. You see the parameters 100 by 20. The bitrate can be different. The latency, as you see, are up to 70 milliseconds. And as far as I remember, and I have already installed a great number of various GSO satellites. For us, this time it was really a great surprise that we had such a short latency of the signal. This is it for my presentation. As I have already mentioned at the very beginning, my presentation is very brief, and you have the feedback from the first client, and please feel free to come to our Jusan Mobile. Colleagues, are there any questions to the speaker? Well, a very short question. You compared the low orbit systems such as Starlink with GSO. What about the Chinese colleagues? Did you try to compare with them? It's very difficult to compare with a solution because, they are not yet in our market. And we were comparing our solutions to the already available and working solutions. SpaceL, yes, we got in touch with them, and we were discussing during different symposiums with them, but we have already picked up our partner, OneWeb, and we'll see how SpaceL is going to enter our market. Of course, they have a lot of promises. Let's see how these promises will be implemented. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Yes, please. Yes, please. The question goes to you. Thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify your railroad project. You have already equipped with your telecommunication systems 2 trains. What are the plans for the future? Here we work jointly with Kazakhstan Temirjali. And there are 2 steps here. The first step is Talgo. We have about 30 Talga trains, and it is much easier to equip them because the rail cars do not change. And during the second step, we would like to equip the standard trains that were procured during the previous periods. There are some difficulties. I cannot tell you anything about the timelines of this project implementation because it's commercial in confidence, but we are planning to equip with our telecommunication solutions all trains of Kazakhstan Temirjali, and by the year end, the first step is going to be implemented. It will be completed. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, yes, please. Are there any plans for civil aviation? Well, this question is probably more difficult. Let me entertain the question on civil aviation, because with civil aviation, it's a little bit more complicated. First of all, because this sector of industry is pretty difficult and it is heavily regulated. In civil aviation, we work only through the global partners such as Viasat, Fuse, Panasonic, Go Business Aviation, Intelsat. And why we have decided to do it this way is, first of all, because they are already certified by the producers of aircrafts to install satellite terminals on board such aircrafts. Secondly, very often the aircrafts require implementation of multi-orbital solutions, whereas there is no access to different GSO satellite constellations. Therefore, they cannot provide such a convergency solutions as their own solution. I understand that you are very much interested in the situation here in Kazakhstan, and we've been discussing this issue with different airlines. We understand their demand and need, and first and foremost, the national carrier. And they are they're discussing this issue with our global partners, and hopefully in the nearest future they will be able to form mutual understanding and will get down to the deployment of such systems. And you have to understand that unlike terrestrial systems, the situation here is more complicated, because the installation of a satellite terminal is possible only when an aircraft is not used. So you have to wait for such a particular moment. And these procedures are usually conducted globally in 4 locations in the world. 2 are located in Europe and 2 are located in Americas. And here, even though, let's say conventionally, Air Astana will be able to work out a solution on in-flight connectivity, no matter with us or with a different constellation or maybe with GSO partners, to expect the implementation of such solutions might take place within 3 years. I would say that these are very long-term projects. But anyway, the plans to work with Kazakhstani Airlines are in our portfolio. I hope I entertained your question.
Для информации просто.
Just for your information, the Qatar Airlines are equipped with Starlink 20 megabits per second, while the passenger seat, besides Turkish Airlines, Emirates, when they operate via geostationary networks, and they do provide gate-to-gate services. As you board the plane, as you leave the plane, from the standpoint of the regulation of the service, it still remains beyond the field of our regulators, but this kind of service is available on board any planes of Turkish Airlines, Emirates. You will be able to get it. If you try the low orbit satellites, this is the Qatar Airlines, you'll immediately end up in the digital environment. Dmitry talked about the certification, so I would like to speak a bit more about this. This is good that this event is happening in Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan is some sort of a satellite hub. If you take a look at the CS countries, the longest dry land border in the world is between Russia and Kazakhstan. So if you take a look from the top to the bottom, under the roof of Kazakhstan is Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, almost from all the sides, the Caucasus. They are all surrounded by countries with which multiple regulatory issues need to be settled. So I think our discussion today basically will include some of the other issues, not just for a single country, but the issues which might be relevant for the whole region and the neighborhood. This is somehow turned out that 3GPP got very indulged with IMT, and they forgot about all of the satellite components. And I become the chairman of the committee. How come we came up with the standards, and then it was getting worse and worse, and there was nothing. So now we prepared some of the standards. 3GPP, it jumped on the last wagon of this train when we start providing services without any certification. Beta services which run without any standards by 3GPP partnership. What do you think is the role of this partnership and how important it is? They now included release 18. In the release 18, they already included some satellite issues, not indirectly, but very directly. So maybe Vasily will start with you. Thank you very much for this question. I only understood AUT out of the whole question. Well, it's hard for me to assess these things directly, but speaking about the role of satellites in general, in AUT, the topic was raised quite some time ago with the development of low orbital systems, because there are large low orbit constellations designed for IoT, Internet of Things. But 3GPP noted that the ITU is not catching up with all of the same things, the international union. So the sooner everyone realized that all of these changes must be correctly regulated, you'll need to catch up with this. You can see this, so you realize this, right? Our neighboring countries. It just turned out that Kazakhstan announcing that it's open for technologies and Kazakhstan, who happened to be in somewhat advanced position because all of our neighbors, they are looking at our experience for some expertise, specifically low orbital satellites and on some of the other issues. I think it's never late to catch up on things where we have some sort of a lack of balance. Okay, thank you, colleagues. Would you like to add? I can add a few words. Speaking about the standardization from the standpoint of 3GPP, I believe everything is fine because our network is based on these standards. This is LTE network. Basically, our ground infrastructure acts as a node B, as a processing facilities. Our satellites and ground stations, basic stations. We consciously chose this topology that is in line with the LTE standards. This enables to smoothly integrate with the networks of the ground operators. And by adding this, I'd like to say that recently we tested the seamless integration with the 5G networks. This is what is going to be implemented in the next generations of our constellation of satellites. And we used to be the first operator who confirmed this kind of a philosophy of a single transport, unified transport environment for the next generation network. Well, So finishing this, I'd like to say that the availability of unified standards is important and they must apply. And what I'm saying is not just about global standards, which are developed technically 3GPP or ITU. Also, regional standards are important, regional rules of the game. And in the EU, we see the availability of two resolutions, 1504, 1705, except apart from the implementation of the general regulatory practice, we also implement some unified technical standards for the satellite terminals. They basically help to quickly facilitate quick adoption of these technologies in the market. And the most recent meeting of the heads of telecom administrations of RSS, I told all of the administration, all the telecom ministers that this is we can see the global structures are not catching up with the technological progress. Developing something at the level of each country may be unreasonable. So the role of these regional entities becomes more valid when some resolutions or standards may need to appear. So within a particular region, these may successfully apply. Thank you. Of course, we are able to develop some standards, but for this you need to have some satellite networks that will implement those standards. Well, of course, there are some sovereign countries like China. In China, they can afford developing their own protocols and interface because they have 1 billion people. Plus, they have the region that is nearby. They can 1 more billion people can use it. There is a market, there is demand. The regional and national standards, they might take place. Well, how about the rest of the planet? And what's the role of 3GPP and ITU, their interrelations, because this is the partnership. Happily, I'd like to say that the interfaces of the satellite component IMT 2020, they will be approved at the upcoming meeting Commission 4 at the end of the year. Now let's go back to the ratio or numbers of satellite and ground operators. We told them we're not the enemy, we're not going to strangle them, but, well, I'd like to hear a bit more. What are the main areas of cooperation and what's the mutual interest there? Who would like to start? Well, let me start and then I'll pass the floor to someone else, because he represents the ground operator, the ones who were strangled already, almost. Maybe he will be able to respond to why this is of interest for them. And we can strangle each other while hugging each other. Okay. It all depends on a specific business model that satellite operators pursue. If this is an operator that comes to work with the end customers, well, I think there might be no bigger friendship here. Well, if it is an operator who operates wholesale highway systems, this friendship works well. We've got some case in Kazakhstan, Jusan Mobile. We have some cases with the European operators. Here, the balance is important. It's important to understand what are the positive sides of this. For the traditional operator, this is the opportunity to come to places which are kind of too expensive or difficult to access and to implement these projects. Especially it's important in the corporate segment. While all sorts of mining operations oil and gas business, which are located remotely from the main telecoms lines. So using satellite technologies, mobile operators, they can build their private LTE network, which might be very important for the communications at such a facility. Well, truly, Dmitry voiced some of the key arguments which are faced by the operators who decide to use the low-orbit satellites. Kazakhstan is a unique country. We have a huge geographical area which covering with the fiber optics is almost impossible. There will be some white spots left anyways. Might be some remote areas. There are lots of villages, settlements where the telecoms must be available. That's why we moved in the direction of low orbit satellites to close those gaps where the fiber optics will never arrive. This is one area. And there is nothing better than backing up the land communications, ground communications with the satellite communications, because the satellite communication, it doesn't depend on any cables, simply works individually. In the case of any emergency, you can have stable comms. So we move along in different areas, complementing each other. Thank you. Let's go back to the geostationary orbit. I'd like to check with you, Vasily, for instance. Now, we often see examples when T2D services are provided from geostationary satellites, the customer's terminals. 2 weeks ago in China, I tested this kind of communication. Of course, there is some small latency, but the quality of communication is very good. Of course, this is a specialized satellite with a large aperture, 12 meters, bigger than 12 meters. In these conditions, well, you need to host the low-orbit satellites that are order less and less, 6 units last month. It's becoming difficult to order this because there are 200 projects globally, and all require supplies of certain components. And the operators are satellite operators in this difficult situation. Well, I'd like to hear from you. What are the main ways of improving efficiency of your work? What's your business case? So what are you doing to deal with this situation? Well, of course, the question is kind of complicated. Well, you voiced this particular case, D2D, device to device, via satellites. Is this a Chinese satellite? Yeah, this is not a commercial project, really. Commercial projects. It's hard to imagine how much will the satellite cost with such aperture. But you noted well, the China is such a market where it may be beneficial. We in Kazakhstan, I can speak for this company, for this country, we are in a somewhat different situation. We have a large geographical area, low density of the population. Specifically from our view on geostationary systems, I think this is in the realm of the government care. This is the possibility of creating information networks which are independent in their nature. But geostationary satellites, there are some very interesting solutions, not just D2D. There are portable terminals, voice-based services to make phone calls, and design telecom networks that fully meet the interests of the government authority, information security. I think this is the strongest side of this. But on the other hand, the economic attraction of geostationary satellites will probably be declining, and it's already declining. Now geostationary satellites, ISS, Intelsat, Eutelsat, they recognize there are very few of them still commercially viable. And there are large client-based satellites out there. But most of them are unprofitable, so the company like ours, we have one or two satellites. Speaking about those services that can be developed and become commercially viable in an absolute sense, it's kind of hard. So here it's important to have some government backing. And if the government has the task of having its own modern infrastructure, when we talk about the satellite communications or satellite technologies in general, we're not just talking about services we provide. This industry, this area has, as they call it, the indirect impact, indirect benefits. The indirect benefits are about the fact that in any country that is developing its own infrastructure, based on this infrastructure, you can develop some of the other areas like science, applied things. The infrastructure defines the level of the country's development. I think this issue shouldn't be considered in the economic realm only for geostationary satellites, but what are the overall benefits for the country, and it should be maintained. Thank you. Of course, a number of objectives that are handled by the national systems cannot be resolved by any foreign satellite constellations, international constellations. So the national sovereignty in the area of telecoms should always be maintained by the state if it wants to maintain such sovereignty. Now I would like to take a look at some other topic, the D2D trend. Today it's getting more and more attention, but there are several approaches, like number one, developing the spectrum for mobile satellites. The Chinese version recalled the operate and the C-band. The same as EcoStar L band is used. This is one option. When there is some independence from satellite operators, the Chinese colleagues, they already manufacture 30 different satellites. Huawei, Honor, they have the additional satellite mode. Well, basically, the Chinese smartphones have the satellite connection mode. It's the same as the any other mobile phone. Where there is no coverage, the satellite technologies start working. But what specifically relates to the joint use of spectrum, UHF, and so on, the standards of the spectrum, who is taking on this burden, who acts as lead, mobile operators or satellite operators? What are the relations between them? I think, Musa and Dmitry, the floor is to you, and maybe someone from the room would like to speak. Look, the issue is kind of complicated. The issue is controversial in a way. Because right now we can see that the leading role from the standpoint of D2D services is played by one single satellite operator who is trying to promote these things. Mobile operators, they act as the followers. They don't want to stay overboard. You have to follow. But working in the same spectrum, well, it creates lots of questions like how will they protect the spectrum of the mobile operators? SpaceX agreed with T-Mobile and FCC in the United States. But again, understanding the approaches that Starlink has to the work of its constellation, it doesn't really mean they will be turning off their satellite transmissions and not broadcast in the areas where they don't have an agreement with mobile operators. Will it have an impact on the networks? Maybe it will. Maybe it will be harmful for the local mobile networks. Will the local mobile operators deal with that? Unlikely. So, this is a very serious question out there. There is a different approach by the device manufacturers, like Apple. We're also discussing some partnership with Starlink. The Apple's philosophy is accessibility of the satellite communication on Apple devices is only possible in the event that the device defines there is no mobile network nearby. Therefore, they partly protect mobile operators, but they enable they provide some convenience to their users when the mobile networks no longer available. Well, not just emergency calls, but the future development D2D. For Apple, this is a so-called balanced approach by the manufacturers of mobile units to ensure some integration and also limit satellite operators to prevent from producing any harm for their partners, mobile operators. It would be nice to see how they're going to address these issues, but the specific load on the operators to serve a spectrum and being subjected to any interference from space, they unlikely be happy in this situation. So far, this is not really clear. The regulators themselves have no idea about that. But for me personally, the approach and the use of OSS frequencies seems to be the most appropriate because we are satellite constellations, we see the impact on each other, regardless of the fact that there are some coordination mechanisms in place. There are some instances when low orbit constellations have an impact on us, and we have certain difficulties in certain parts. And these things, they're very difficult to address. Sometimes we see the impact on the other telecom systems by low orbit constellations. There are tons of issues related to unauthorized access of systems which cannot be resolved in any fashion. So in this part, we shouldn't prevent the technologies from development, but the spectrum must be distributed. Thank you, Dmitry. I expected a different answer. The first thing I'd like to note, no single conference of Holy Grigorovich with my participation would happen without any interesting facts of the day. So the fact of the day is about the following. The talks between Apple and Starlink failed. Apple refused to turn down the cooperation on $1 billion that they were ready to invest into this $1 billion. Well, it didn't interest Starlink. Just FYI. And plus, there are different concepts, even in the concept that has been adopted by FCC with regard to who takes on what duties. In some cases, mobile operators must take their responsibility, and there are some projects, regardless of OneWeb or some other low orbit constellations. For instance, Bluebird, with some small antennas the size of a football field. There will be only 300 of those. So they will be providing D2D in the respective spectra. So we need to understand who takes what kind of responsibility. In some countries, these will be mobile operators. They will coordinate with the neighboring countries, like all of the mobile operators between Kazakhstan and Russia. Kazakhstan and Russia can agree on the spectrum distribution, and then some satellite operator can appear which operates on the same spectrum, and someone must address this issue. Who? Ground operators or satellite operators? So the concept provides for first approach and the second approach. The number of projects that are being implemented in the spectrum which are used by the mobile operators, they do require some close attention. Paragraph 1.13 of the conference of 2027 will be looking into this into detail. This group typically collects up to 300 individuals as they discuss these issues. Again, I'd like to invite you for closer cooperation in the fourth commission. Now I would like to check with you. We are probably talking about different constellations, different orbits, higher elliptical orbit, geostationary orbit, low orbit. There is a notion of super low orbit, 250 kilometers. Very slippery, but this orbit seems to be very attractive. Because 70 millisecond, Starlink has 2040. That one is gonna have a lower latency, almost real-time communication. How can one equipment, terminal equipment, should be able to work with this entire multi-orbital structure? What's your outlook? Will it work? Because some equipment is already working with the orbital equipment. High elliptical orbit, other. What's your outlook? Vasily, let's start with you. Frankly speaking, I haven't thought about this. But after quick thinking, we all like when we have some universal solutions. This is what the first goods from China attracted us. You buy something and it does everything. It does things badly, but everything. So, terminal equipment that is likely to work with any type of satellites, of any orbit, I think this is a good thing. Again, there are always some custom solutions. They've always been there, they will keep on being there. They work for specific services or applications, and however hard the manufacturers try to produce universal terminals, I think it will be limited in some functionality in a certain way. But I like the idea. Well, I know very little about this, but as far as I know, there is one solution which is at least being developed right now, collaboration O3P and EOTelsat. The solution that is going to work with two different orbits. So one solution that is going to work with two different orbits. I think gradually globalization will force several operators to unite. Because in any way, Some of the low orbit constellations, they do not cover what can be covered by the medium orbit. There is a super low orbit, and there will be some devices who will deliver. Thank you. Here, the main problem is about, well, let's divide things here. There are some terminals that work with both orbits. We do have these certified terminal. But here is the problem, it's going to work on only our satellites or any other satellites they are adjusted for. Musa is saying this is the European Union project that includes several orbits. And one of the options they are looking there is creating a multi-orbital terminal. The ability of the terminal to operate with various constellations, this is a problematic issue, and this is about lacking a single standard for these satellite constellations, because some have closed systems, others have open systems, all use different waveforms, different encryptions, and there are no general rules. In mobile telecommunications, it's all clear. You take a mobile phone, you come to any country, and it works because it's all standardized. Here, there is no general standard. Yes, the terminals will appear, multi-orbital terminals, but most likely they will be specifically set for specific constellations, and they might add the elements of work with the other orbits, but only within this particular constellation. Natalia probably remembers the original office raised the issue of allocating some bandwidth for Internet of Things. They weren't looking at that as well, but we managed to develop these standards. But we haven't been able to manage this. Iridium, they suffered from 1997, almost 30 years. They couldn't get commercial viability. They got them 1 million users, and they couldn't move any further. Several years ago, they started providing IoT services, and as a result, they are in a very good position. They are commercially viable, and they're developing this business. It's of interest for them. So I'd like to know your opinion about the perspective of the application satellite IoT. How do you see the future? Well, there are lots of solutions emerging. We just listened to our Brazilian operator. They said they're launching their own system. There are lots of examples, but they are all being launched. Discussing anything in detail kind of complicated. Iridium, Motorola risked at one point of time. They launched it, they went bankrupt. The company exists on its own and now is commercially viable. Well, I think they do have some kind of a future. But what future, we'll see it. Thank you. If you don't mind, I would like to add a few words. IoT. IoT is developing fast in the sense of there are lots of projects, smart homes, smart farms, smart ports, smart factories, smart mines, and so everything is getting smart. All of this smart are the IoT. When you stuff certain locations with multitude of sensors, webcams, control devices, all of this information, IoT can become a universal area which will help all of the constellations. Because in a way, organizing IoT can do via geostationary and low orbit constellations. And several dozen cubes. Depending on what kind of scale of IoT you need, some house in the village, or some cabin in the village, or some big mining pit or manufacturing site. So I think that there is a great future for this. Thank you. And just one more question. Now we all kind of think what to do with the geostationary satellites, but there are some interesting ideas and projects that relate to smaller satellites. They're small in size, the specific sets of functions. If you need one more, you can launch one. If you need more, you can launch some more. It's like an extra load, but they are mobile, maneuverable, and they can be designed for the specific task. What's your take on this? Frankly speaking, I really like this specific direction. Globally, there are lots of startup projects who do develop small geostationary satellites, which can be used to address national scale issues. Well, basically address the problems of a small country, even a bigger country like Kazakhstan. As part of the development of our projects with several companies, different economic models, and approaches in providing services. The other thing is that traditional manufacturers of the satellite equipment, they do not quite accept this concept, but all of these companies who manufacture those satellites, they use these solutions of the industrial nature as the componentry base. These satellites are designed for 7, 8, maybe 10 years compared to traditional 15-year satellites. I think this is a very good thing for the companies if it wants to try some new technology. Or if they've got certain needs in a specific region, they need to be quickly covered. For the larger satellite operators, this might be an interesting thing. It may be in some demand. In some region, HTS, providing greater throughput COM channels, but as the basic development option for the company, it's kind of risky. Thank you. Our time is up, so just one more question. Although I have much more questions, left. We believe promoting services in the market is kind of complicated, selling throughput and so on. And the global players, they already create some kind of platforms, cooperate in order to promote their service. In your opinion, do you see any backgrounds for the creation of some sort of a regional aggregator which could promote the throughput capacity service, sell services from multiple operators, geostationary, non-geostationary? And so we have this International Organization of Satellite Communication, Intersputnik. It could be a platform for that. I'd like you to speak in turn, please. Well, this kind of a partnership, it already exists. Global players, they successfully cooperate with the regional players supporting capacities where necessary, providing some other services. We have lots of projects. Geostationary orbit. Recently, we signed a strategic agreement with Turksat, where Turksat will use some of the capacity of our satellite constellation of Europe for their purpose. So these partnerships, they are out there. Should there be any regional hub there? I think the market will decide whether this is needed or not, but so far the partnerships are being built on one-on-one basis. What is good in the geostationary orbit world? We work with the specific regions where we have national operators. The interaction is from the standpoint of technical support of each other. It is established really well. There are lots of cases when the regional satellite operators they face certain issues with one satellite. The other global player or the other regional player would give them their capacity to maintain their partners in the market in a difficult situation. Sometimes this is being done free of charge. Well, this is an interesting point. Previously, we couldn't even think about this because we only had Kassat and we only worked with them. Now, there are more and more non-geostationary low orbits constellations. So we expect that Space Sail will come, Amazon is coming up, and until each of these operators, they are looking for partners. Possibly it would be an interesting solution, but I think here we need to work on how this is going to be implemented. How will partners be able to enter into this arrangement? Will it be handled at the government's level? Well, for Kazakhstan, this is a novelty, and the Ministry of the Digital Development, we work with them for licensing and so on. Now they have no idea how to do and what to do. They ask their international partners to get some examples, and they realize there are very few of these examples. They are building everything from scratch. The international partners, they help. I think that's an interesting idea and have the right to live, yeah. I believe this is a very good idea. You mentioned it right. There is Intersputnik, they already taking care of these for geostationary satellites. If it gets joined by the regional units or low orbit satellites, because people are lazy by nature, and this is the movement of the progress. Remember, we previously used classifieds in the newspaper. Now you go to the mobile banking and can pay for your utilities, buy an airline ticket, and why not? If someone gets a need with the satellite resource, but they cannot fully understand how they can actually make it happen. So if they go to some single point, single source that can offer different options, they had this would be really great. Thank you very much. Before I pass the floor to distinguished Alan Grigorovich for the final remarks, I would like to thank our panelists. Thank you for your time, thank you for your attention, thank you for your presentations and for your good response. Let's give it a round of applause.